Hello there, guys, and welcome to the painting of some adorable cosmonaut dachshunds. The links to all of the materials I'm using, by the way, are down below. For this painting, I'm using watercolor and a couple of mixed media like colored pencils and chalk and graphite at the end. So I'm starting this painting the same way that I started my penguin painting, if you've seen that. So what I do to achieve this sort of depth and color in the night sky is I go ahead and I paint a colorful underpainting that eventually, well, pretty soon actually, will all be covered with ink. But I just kind of go around with some varied colors and paint some sweeping lines of the galaxy, and you'll see what effect this has. It really adds like quite a nice depth to the piece. And now I go around and I just cover the whole thing with the first layer of black ink. I don't worry about being too precise in the coverage here. This time I'm using platinum carbon ink, which is a waterproof ink. To tell you the truth, I probably would have picked a different ink because as you can see, this doesn't actually get as nice flow, but since there are about 4 different ink layers, ultimately, in this piece, it turns out perfectly fine. And then I just kind of go over it as well with like a couple different colors. So I put a lot of blue in this sky. And of course I added this blue layer to create the little world that the dachshunds can see from the moon. Here I'm going in and I'm painting the surface of the moon. What I do is first I create some craters and I let them dry a little bit so you kind of get the crater effect. And then when they're not quite 100% dry, I go in and I fill in the surface of the moon so you can see sort of some of them underneath. And then what I'm doing here is I'm adding a little bit of blue so the moon doesn't so starkly stand against the sky, and I'm kind of defining the little outlines of the dachshunds in this like darker blue mixed in with a little bit of ink. And I really just let the water do a lot of the work for me, as you can see. So now it is time to paint the dachshunds, and I think that there are about 5 little characters, so I'm not going to show you 100% of painting all of them, but this is the main sort of focal point of the piece. This little guy who's kind of looking across at the big wide world from the surface of the moon. And what I always do is I just start with the first layer of watercolor. I try to incorporate as much depth in this layer as possible because I don't like going back and adding too much. And then after I have that first layer of paint, I go in and I add some outlines with pencil that just kind of makes all of it stand out. So just a sharp 2B pencil I'm using right now. And I found this to be really helpful in creating the sort of texture, I guess, of the spacesuits. I thought it was a pretty cute little way to create that quilting effect. And this is Dachshund number 2. He is a very free-spirited little guy who's just, yeah, floating in space, as you do. So I tried to create a little bit of like a retro color palette with the suit. So I kind of used that tomato red and turquoise a lot and blue. My stuff is usually pretty colorful, although I will attempt to limit my color palette sometimes, but I think in the end, the only color I didn't use in this piece is green, so. And then here is our little Lance Armstrong-esque dachshund. He's probably the most serious of the bunch. He's the captain of this cosmonaut crew. And, you know, contemplative with his little flag. I do go ahead and use a pen to make their faces stand out a little bit more. Their expressions are so important, I think, to the piece, so. And then after I've painted the first layer, I do go ahead and add a little bit of a second layer. I'm using my favorite, what I always use for these big pieces, which is the Arches cold pressed watercolor paper. And it can take a lot of paint, and it does end up giving you like sort of a really deep effect. So this is why I use this paper, because there's so many layers and like the sky, and I just, you know, kind of go in, it's like I'm doing here with the world, just add like those little bits of paint that kind of create that lovely spherical shape and add that really dreamy effect that watercolor can give you. And one of my favorite things to do on pieces, although this doesn't really translate to digitization very well, but I love to add a touch of gold to my pieces. So all of these little cosmonauts get little touches of gold and little details, you know, just kind of filled in. Here I'm also using the gold to create a few shadows around the suit. And I did use silver as well for their little oxygen tanks. I think I also used it to bring out some of the little craters on the moon. I think this guy is my favorite. I just love his way. And another one of my favorite parts, as you well know, is creating the night sky. So I just put some white ink. I think that I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrus white paint. And I put it on the tip of a toothbrush and I splatter. I try not to splatter perfectly evenly. I really like the variation because, you know, that's what you'll find in the sky. Some of the clusters are closer, some are far away. And then what I do is I kind of meticulously take this white gel pen and I go ahead and I bring out certain stars, and I'll create little shooting stars, and sometimes I'll put little constellations in there. So I think that's kind of a fun thing, at least for me. And finally, I add some finishing touches with a variety of mixed media. So here, because of, you know, kind of the rough moon surface, I'm using a 4H graphite pencil. And I also am using this charcoal pencil just to bring out some of the white parts of the surface. And finally, giving their rocket ship a little silver sheen as well. And there you have it. That is the cosmonaut Dachshunds having a fun little time on the moon. So I have made this into a print, which is available in my Etsy shop. So I'll link that below as well. And as always, if you guys paint any space scenes or dachshunds yourself, I would love to see those. I'm actually making a gallery of everyone's paintings right now. So go ahead and shoot them to me and I will include them. And I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you again soon. TTFN.